anyways, I just want to make people aware because when you're not aware of what the signs are and how to tell someone's like that, then you're a lot more vulnerable to it. So I'm just going to start by reading the newspaper and what the newspaper said in it from my town. Okay, so it says, Brad Williamson pleads guilty to sexual harassment. It says Williamson, but Brad Williamson will serve 240 hours in jail after pleading guilty to sexual harassment. Williamson, the age of 41, was originally charged with third-degree sexual abuse, a Class A misdemeanor, accused by the state of touching the breast of a girl younger than 18 between September 1st, 2014 and December 31st, 2014 in Grant County, according to information filed in Grant County Circuit Court by Grant County District Attorney Jim Carpenter. Williamson, whose current residence is listed in court documents as Vancouver, Washington, pleaded guilty to the lesser included charge of harassment. So the day of court, I went in beforehand, and they actually told me that he was going to get harder charges than they were going to file in the first place, but the charges were less because they didn't have proof, because he made me delete that. And so I don't have any proof anymore. And I was using apps because I couldn't pay for a phone. And those apps, once it's like 30 or 15 days, then all of the messages that you had on there are gone. So, and I deleted the messages on Facebook, so when I listened to him, he totally screwed me over because he knew what he was doing. It's also a Class A misdemeanor. August 11th, he was sentenced by Judge William D. Kramer, Jr., who was actually a very fair judge. Even though he didn't really get the chance to listen to my whole story, when he heard part of it from my statement that I read out loud, he realized that something more was going on and that they weren't sharing all of the information. And he was really disgusted because Brad was laughing in the courtroom while court was in session and smirking, so he was really disappointed in him, and he told him that he holds him out of a higher standard. So that's the only reason that he got harder charges than what the DA was trying to press. And they have reasons for that. So he was sentenced to bench probation for 325 days with 240 hours of jail time required, as well as 100 hours of community service. He was also ordered to pay $1,000 to the victim. And actually, when I went in there, they had me sign this piece of paper saying that I would use it all for counseling. And I thought that he was going to be a registered sex offender, and so I just signed it because I thought that they were going to be able to get it to where he doesn't need to work with kids anymore. But it didn't end up being that way, even though the judge wanted it to be that way. His hands were tied, though, because Brad had already pled. So, as a condition of his probation, Williamson must complete a sexual offender treatment program and provide information to the court. He must not be involved in any youth organizations or visit places primary for children. So I want people to share this, that way no one in Washington where he lives will hire him and then he's gonna abuse more children, because right before he came to my church, because he was my pastor. He did it before at his church in Burbank, and that's what he told me through Messenger. It was through either my Text Now account or my Pinger account. And those are the messages that he had me delete. And I don't have any proof of it. So I might have to say that I believe or whatever. But if I'm being honest, I see no reason why it's wrong to share it with the world. Because he does not deserve to just run free and do it over and over and over again at different churches, ruining the faith. He doesn't need to do that. So he must submit to polygraph and penile plus the more graphic assessments. He must write an apology to the victim and have no other contact with her or her family. He must have no unsupervised contact with anyone younger than 18 except his own children. And the judge wanted to give him at least 90 days in jail because of what I read aloud in court. And Brad was not really an upfront person. He would do little things in front of other people, but then it started from slight touching into controlling where I go. He would know where I would be. He would come to my not my cheer practices, but when I was cheering basketball, he would come to the games, sit next to me and my cheerleaders, and go talk to my coach when his wife's over there in the stands. So, and he would talk about how he likes how short my skirt is and stuff like that. And that's just stuff in public. And so it's really hard for me to understand why I didn't tell someone before, because I guess I just would feel too guilty because I knew his family. I started getting close to his family, and I didn't want to ruin anything that they had because I liked his kids and I liked his wife, and I just was stuck in a hard place, and I felt like I needed to let it happen in order to be close to God. I felt like I needed to protect the kids that were there, but I was too scared to tell. But the only thing that he got charged with was touching my breast, and that was while I was driving the car. He had offered for me to drive his car to get permit hours so I could get my license, and I was driving towards Canyon City, and we were kind of by where the Chinese restaurant is, I think, and it's where the Canyon City Park is and the Canyon City Post Office, and we're turning around in that big parking lot, and as I'm heading back to his house to be dropped off back to my house, he puts his hand on my chest, and I told him, Brad, you need to stop now, because if you don't, I'm going to wreck this car. And he didn't stop for a good almost 30 seconds. It took me telling him several times just for him to stop. And I could have wrecked his car. I was going to wreck his car if he didn't stop because it scared me. He also told me he was scared of what he would do to me in his van with his daughter in the back. She was playing with her stuffed animal, and he was telling me that he was scared of what he was going to do to me, and it was right before we pulled up to my house. And then months later, or a year later, or whatever, I had gone on this trip. It was to YMCA, and he had slapped my butt there when I was going up the stairs to the slide. And he had also, when I had gone down the slide after him, because I didn't want him slapping my butt again, he had grabbed me and pulled me like against him and wouldn't let me go, and we're in the water. And my friend Janelle saw it, but I don't know if she knows really how bad things were, but I never told her, so I mean, how could she? Um, It was that time, and then Brad had signed me up for Arizona trip to Doken. It was in Doken, Arizona, where buildings are spread apart and the town is secluded from any other town in that area. So it's like that town and desert. So I did not sign up to go on that trip, and Brad had signed me up, and he's paid for a lot of my trips. I was planning on going to a youth conference. It was like a Christian thing where you go to Kentucky and like you pick up trash and then you go to concerts and you meet, you hear like preachers and stuff, and they'll preach to you, and it's like for a certain amount of time, and it's supposed to be really fun. But I had started saving money through fundraising and stuff like that, and he had offered to, like, if I earned $100, he'd pay $100 into my account. That way I could go. And all these things were basically used to manipulate me, even though he made it seem like a good thing. And he basically just held these things over my head like, this is your life now. Like, you have nothing else. This is your life. You have to be at church. You can't have other friends if they're not from church. And that's not even the worst thing that happened, actually. But Brad has not gotten the charges that I think that he deserves. I think that everyone needs to know what he's into, because the reason I know that he's not going to stop unless he is stopped is because he was sexting a girl back in Burbank, role-playing that he was raping her. And supposedly what he told me through texting on one of my texting apps is that he was sexting this girl and they were role-playing that he was raping her and that she was totally into it. And then he came here and he did stuff, and then he tried to go to Washington and be a pastor again. And I know that he's lived all over the country. So I know that he's going to do it again. And I don't want to let that happen. So if you've ever had anything happen to you like this, please just let someone know, like your mom, your dad, even a friend. I didn't even tell an adult, and it got taken care of for the most part, even though my whole story wasn't out there. At least people know what he's capable of now, and that he's not a good person to be around children. And that's really all I want. I don't want him to work with children anymore. I don't feel like that's something that he should be doing, because he's putting other kids at risk, and not only physically but mentally as well, because when you manipulate a child like that when they're so young and use all these ways to manipulate you, basically, because he was my pastor and I honestly trust him until someone had to tell me that what was going on wasn't okay, because I felt like it was, because that's how I was getting get close